Section 4 of Orpheus with his Lute by W.M.L. Hutchinson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Prometheus, the Firebringer. While Clio told her tale, the eastern sky paled into hues of gray and amethyst, and the woods lay hushed in a deeper than midnight stillness, as if they held their breath, expecting the daily miracle of the sunrise. It came even as she ceased, brimming the hollow of heaven with rosy gold, and at once, as though a charm were broken, the forest seemed alive with a rustle of leaves, the fluttering of wings, and the sweet clamor of 1,000 birds. Half dazed by the sudden flood of color, light, and sound, Orpheus started to his feet. For a moment all things swam before him through a rainbow mist. He rubbed his eyes, and behold, he was standing at his own threshold, alone in the morning sunshine. It needs not, after this, that I should tell how yet 7 nights more the boy found himself among the 9 sisters beside their moonlit well, and 7 times awoke, as from a dream, at sunrise, for the manner of his coming and going was always the same. Only when the months of winter came, it was in his little pallet bed that he fell asleep and woke again, and nothing about his visits to the 9 seemed to him so wonderful as this, that their bird-haunted glade kept all its warmth and bloom, while the forest around lay deep in snow. The very moon that elsewhere sparkled keen with frost athwart leafless boughs, here still beamed soft and golden on trees and flowers that never bade the spring farewell. Now, when for the 3rd time Orpheus must choose a tale to hear, he asked for the story of the men whom Prometheus made out of the river clay. In that story, said Calliope, lies so much of sadness that our sister Melpomene may claim it for herself. Overmuch of sadness, said Melpomene, to please childish ears. Nay, sister, answered Calliope, to a child all is well that ends well, and in this tale the star of hope shines brightest at the close. Come, speak to us of Prometheus and his love to mankind. Melpomene bowed her head in token of consent, and spoke as follows. In the beginning of the reign of Zeus, his bosom friend and counselor was Prometheus, by whose wisdom he had balked the Titans of their revenge. But ere long the young king of the sky became jealous of that very wisdom to which he owed so much, and fell to doubting the loyalty of his chief helper. He began to say to himself that as Prometheus had forsaken Cronos in his hour of need, so he would forsake Zeus, should he foresee the coming of some yet mightier god. Had he not, moreover, interceded for Cronos, and given him a sure refuge in those happy isles that lay beyond the range of lightning flash or thunderstone? And was he not, perhaps, already conspiring with the exiled Titan brethren to restore their ancient king? Now, what mainly bred suspicion in the mind of Zeus was this. Prometheus, though he came duly to council and to feast in the heavenly halls, seemed ever impatient to be gone upon some business of his own in the world below. It fell on a day that Zeus sat banqueting, throned in splendor, such as mortal eye hath not seen, and surrounded by the glorious company of the Olympians, his brothers and sisters, and Prometheus rose up from his place, and made to depart after his wont. And Zeus asked him, What is it you will find on earth, Prometheus, fairer than this house of mine, that you are in such haste to leave? Nothing fairer nor so fair, answered Prometheus with a smile, but something sweeter to me. For bethink you, king of us all, that you were born where you now reign, but I am no native of the sky. To me, a son of earth, the green glens of Arcadia are dearer than all your starry pomp. So he went his way, but Zeus sat frowning in his place, for the answer misliked him. Presently he called to him the blithe-faced Hermes, his herald and messenger, and bade him follow Prometheus and watch what he did in those glens that he loved better than the golden houses of heaven. It is for no good end, he said wrathfully, that the Titan hides his doings from my view under the dense covert of his oak woods. Straightway Hermes put on his shining winged sandals that bear him over sea and land more swiftly than bird can fly, and sped upon his errand. When he came again, Zeus asked him what he had seen. King of gods, said Hermes, smiling, have no fear that Prometheus will plot anything against us Olympians. He recks not of us. All his delight is in the race of puny mortals, whom he made out of the clay to pleasure old Cronos. And as for his business in Arcadia, it is neither more nor less than devising their welfare. He has taught them, it seems, to fashion rude tools and weapons of horn and bone and flint, to build themselves huts, to till and sow the ground, and many other arts that the men of the gold and silver ages knew nothing of. I heard some among them speak of him. They call him the great brother whose wisdom helps to lighten their hard lot, and there was word also of a wondrous gift he has promised to bestow on them ere long. What gift is that? Asked Zeus uneasily. They do not know, answered Hermes, but Prometheus has told them it will be to them a good servant and a bad master. Now Zeus was troubled at these tidings, for he did not believe that the great Titan would thus befriend mere mortals, creatures of a day, without some deep design. In time, perhaps, he would teach them so much that they would become wiser than gods. Nay, this unknown gift he had promised them might be some potent charm that would make them strong enough to defy the Lord of the Thunder. Zeus pondered long what this gift might be, but he could make no guess at it. So, when the immortals were again gathered to the banquet, he put forth a riddle to them all, saying, What is it that is a good servant and a bad master? Some said one thing, some another, but Prometheus knew that Hermes had spied upon him in Arcadia, and whispered in his ear, Minion of Zeus, if you would win favor with your master, say, It is fire. And Hermes said it, laughing after his wont, for he himself never bore ill will to anyone, and dreamed not that a quarrel was toward between his lord and the Titan. Zeus no sooner heard the answer of Hermes than he perceived that fire was indeed the gift Prometheus was minded to bestow upon men, which as yet was unknown to mortals, and burned only beneath the earth and on the sacred hearth of the gods on high. He resolved to defeat the purpose of Prometheus, whatever it might be, and, rising up, he said, You have heard, Olympians, my riddle and its answer. Now hear and obey my command. Let none dare to profane the thrice holy element of fire by bestowing it on mortals, but be it forever consecrate to the use of the gods alone. Swift vengeance will I take on him who shall transgress this my law. The rest of the immortals hastily promised obedience, but Prometheus began to plead earnestly with Zeus for the race of mortals, bidding him remember the want and hardship they must endure now that earth no longer gave her increase freely as in the age of gold. Without fire, he said, mankind could not warm their shivering frames in the winter season, nor forge weapons of metal to defend themselves from beasts of prey, nor bring to perfection any of those helpful crafts that he had begun to teach them. Forbid them fire, he cried, and you forbid them all hope of rising above the life of animals. Their doom is sure. They must be savages to the end. But Zeus would not hearken to his pleading, for he could not see that the heart of Prometheus was filled with compassion and loving kindness for helpless man, being indeed blinded by his jealous mistrust. "What are these folk of clay to me?" he said disdainfully. "They were not made for my pleasure, that I should show them favor. Nay, they belong to Cronus, who bade you provide him new worshippers when he had destroyed the race of silver. For his sake they are hateful to me, and I have a mind to cut them off as he did those others, and people earth with a race that has known no other gods but me." Prometheus made him no answer, but gave him a look at once proud and mournful, and in a little while he departed without word of farewell. And after that he came no more to the board of Zeus. But when some days had passed, Zeus looked forth upon the earth and saw pillars of blue smoke rising among the trees in all the valleys of Arcadia. For Prometheus had taken fire from the hearth of the gods by stealth, and brought it to men in a hollow wand of fennel that served him instead of a staff. He had shown them how to make open hearths of sun-baked clay in their poor dwellings, and how to kindle dry wood thereon with the new gift, and they cried aloud for joy and wonder as they saw the scarlet flowers of flame blossom from the dead boughs. Then was Zeus wroth indeed. In the first moment of his fury, he stretched forth his hand to his thunderbolts with intent to hurl them upon the land of Arcadia and utterly consume every living thing therein. But he bethought him suddenly of a better way to wreak vengeance upon the rebel Prometheus, and he stayed his hand. Thunderbolts could not slay the Titan, since he was immortal, and to destroy the land and the men he loved would be but small satisfaction, for he could soon make himself another folk in some country fairer than Arcadia. "These men shall not die," said the angry god, "but I will devise such evils for them that they shall desire death rather than life, and Prometheus shall see their misery and be powerless to succor them. That shall be his keenest pang among the torments I will heap upon him. Now there are two giant twins, whose lot it is to serve him that sits upon the throne of heaven, be he who he may, and the gods call them Kratos and Bia, that is to say, might and force. These Zeus called before him, and having laid certain commands on them, he sent them to the forge of the Cyclopes in Mount Etna, which he had given to the lame smith god Hephaestus, the cunning craftsman of the Olympians, to be his workshop. Meanwhile Prometheus, not ignorant of his doom, betook himself to the house of his brother Epimetheus, and said to him, "Brother, I am bound on a far journey, and must bid farewell to you and to Arcadia, our pleasant home, for the fates will have it so. Grieve not, nor be amazed at the things you will shortly hear concerning me, since all that must befall me I have foreseen with unshaken mind. But take good heed to yourself, and beware above all else of receiving any gift from Zeus." With that he took leave of his brother, and returned to his own house, to await those whom he knew would come speedily, and that night he went unresisting with Kratos, Bia, and Hephaestus to his place of punishment. There is a ravine of ice-clad rocks upon the peak of huge Mount Caucasus, so walled about with gaunt black precipices, so ghastly in its frozen desolation, that it might seem a very temple of death, where nothing living had ever come since the making of the world. Not the tiniest, lowliest plant that grows peeps from the crannies of its jagged cliffs. No voice of beast or bird ever echoes there, save the scream of a famished eagle far aloft. Yet it is a solitude without peace, for night and day fierce gusts sweep through the gorge, now wailing like spirits in torment, now with uproar so hideous that to hear it would drive a man from his wits. The bright snow that lies deep on the mountain head is whirled away by those pitiless blasts before it can mantle the unsightly masses of rock that bestrew the floor of the ravine, or the lightning-scarred crags whence they have fallen. Hither now came the captive Titan, led by the ministers of Zeus. They had bound him with fetters of brass and with chains of iron, which Hephaestus had wrought, being so commanded, but sorely against his will. For he and all the Olympians loved Prometheus because of his great and gracious ways, and had they dared, would have interceded for him with their king. But Kratos and Bia, who were by nature without pity, exulted over their mighty prisoner, and when they were now come to the place Zeus had appointed, and saw that Hephaestus stood gazing sorrowfully upon him, they were enraged. "Hephaestus," cried Kratos fiercely, "why loiter you now? Have you a mind to take sides with this fire-stealer, or have you so soon forgot the charge Zeus gave you by my mouth?" "I would he had given it to some other," muttered the lame god. "Have a care, halt-foot, that he overhear you not," answered Kratos tauntingly. "It is well seen you are loath to do his bidding, and if you make not better speed, your pity may shortly be needed for your own plight." "Savage that you are," retorted Hephaestus, "what needs your rude urging? I know, and will perform the sentence of Zeus. But none that has not, like you, a heart of stone, could joy in such a task. Come, let us about it, and hold your peace the while." Forthwith Kratos and Bia caused Prometheus to stand upright against a huge pillar of rock, and they held up his arms above his head, while Hephaestus bound him to the pillar by the neck and wrists and ankles, riveting his fetters to the rock with nails of adamant. Slowly he plied his hammer, slowly he limped to and fro, and as he worked he heavily sighed. Meantime Kratos feasted his eyes on the sight, and exclaimed impatiently against his slackness. "Bind him faster, Hephaestus," he cried. "Drive home this spike through the iron collar, that he may not turn his head to right or left. Look you how loose sits this manacle. Another rivet, I pray you, lest the cunning rebel shake himself free. So, have you done at last? Aha, Prometheus, could not all your foresight save you from this pass? Now learn, too late, what it is to be the friend of man and the foe of Zeus." "Never a word," answered Prometheus, but Hephaestus angrily bade Kratos and Bia begone, for they had done their office. As they sullenly withdrew, he turned to the motionless figure against the pillar and spoke parting words. "Son of Earth," he said, "not more unwelcome are those bonds to you who wear them than was the forging of them to me. Alas, that my skill is put to such a proof, that I must bind one of race divine in these shackles which no power can break. Ah, rash Prometheus, why did you flout the majesty of Zeus for the sake of worthless mortals? Know you not that a newcomer makes ever a stern master, jealous of his honor? Loath am I to leave you thus, but I can avail you nothing, nor see I whence you are to look for any deliverer. Here then you must bide, shut out from sight and speech of gods or men by these eternal walls. Here, unsheltered in the scorching blaze of noon, you will pray for the coming of starry-kirtled night, albeit to you she brings no solace, but only exchange of torment, the arrows of frost for the arrows of the sun. Aye, where naught else ever changes, dear to your sleepless eyes shall be the comings of morn and eve. Having thus spoken, Hephaestus also went his way with halting steps, and all was silence for a space in that prison house. Then a great cry broke from the Titan in his anguish. O earth, mother of all, O radiant sky, and free winds of heaven, behold what wrongs are mine. Yea, I call on the sun's pure splendor, and the multitudinous smile of ocean waves, and you, O founts of the rivers, to witness what outrage an immortal suffers at an immortal's hand. Behold these shameful bonds, this living tomb where I must wrestle alone with never-ending pain. To this the new Lord of the world has doomed Prometheus for no other crime than giving man fire from heaven. He paused a while, communing with his own heart, then said, Yet why do I lament? All this I foresaw from the beginning, and knew at how great a price I must win for mankind the thrice-blessed gift of fire, whereby alone they shall attain to mastery in every art that ministers to life. Nor will I upbraid the tyrant who has thus repaid my ancient kindness. Not he, but resistless fate has decreed my doom, and he also, in the hour ordained, must learn to submit as I do. Now, while the captive Titan comforted his heart with the thought of what mankind would be able to accomplish by the means of fire, Zeus sat pondering how he might frustrate that good gift with some countervailing evil. For it is a law to all the immortals that none may take away what another has bestowed, nor could even he now deprive mortals of their new possession. He purposed, therefore, to send them some gift so baneful that they should never free from misery their lives long, and thus to fill up the measure of his vengeance upon Prometheus. After long thought, he called Hephaestus to him and said, Hephaestus, I have devised a new thing that has not its like in earth or heaven. Now put forth all your skill, for you must forthwith make it, according to the fashion I will tell you. Of what shall I make it? Asked Hephaestus. Of whatever you can find most fair, said Zeus. Mingle together all things loveliest, sweetest, and best, but look that you also mingle therewith the opposites of each. So Hephaestus took gold and dross, wax and flint, pure snow and mud of the highways, honey and gall. He took the bloom of the rose and the toad's venom, the voice of laughing water and the peacock's squall. He took the sea's beauty and its treachery, the dog's fidelity, the wind's inconstancy, the cruelty of the tiger, and the mother bird's heart of love. All these and other contraries past number he blended cunningly into one substance, and this he molded into the shape that Zeus described to him. When it was finished, Hephaestus looked upon his handiwork and said, We have made no new thing, but the image of a goddess. Nay, said Zeus, we have made the first woman. And with that he breathed upon the image, and it lived, and looked upon them wonderingly, as one suddenly awakened. Then he called all the Olympians to behold the first woman, and they marveled at the beauty of her, for in truth she was fair as any goddess. They cried that they would each offer her some gift on this her birthday, and so they did. The goddesses arrayed her in glorious apparel. Hephaestus decked her with jewels of cunning workmanship, and every god gave her some precious thing. Last of all, Zeus himself placed in her hands a casket of lustrous amber, richly overwrought with flowers and fruit of the pomegranate, and having 2 golden snakes for handles. Behold, immortals, he said, this new fair creature of my shaping thought, endowed with every earthly loveliness, laden with heaven's choicest treasures. Shall she not be named Pandora, all gifted? Seems she not even as a bride adorned for her husband? But she is no mate for an Olympian, for she is mortal. Come, let us send her to wed with Prometheus, in token that we bear him no ill will for his rebel brother's sake. The Olympians were well pleased, for they knew not the guileful intent of Zeus, and straightway he bade Hermes lead Pandora to the house of Prometheus, and say to him, "The king of gods, in sign of his good will towards you, sends you this peerless bride, who brings with her in this casket such a dowry as he only can bestow." So Hermes brought the first woman to Arcadia. Now, when Prometheus saw her beauty, and heard why she was come, he could scarce contain himself for joy at his good fortune, and he received the bride with her casket into his house, and wedded her that day, without once remembering the warning Prometheus gave him not to take any gift from Zeus. But on the morrow it came back to his mind, and he repented of what he had done. For this was his nature, that he was never wise until too late. From this he had his name of Prometheus, which means afterthought, even as his brother was called Prometheus, that is, forethought, because he was wise concerning things yet to come. Prometheus now reflected that the dowry Zeus had given his bride was doubtless meant to work him some deadly harm, and he asked Pandora if she knew what lay in her amber box. "No, my husband," said she, "but I will fetch the box from our chamber, and we will open it and see. I long to know what the great king of the immortals has bestowed on us." "Bide here, Pandora," said the Titan, "and listen well to what I shall say. My mind misgives me that yonder casket holds some evil secret, and he who sent it is not a friend, but a subtle enemy. I was warned erewhile to take no gift at his hand, but in my folly I paid little heed. Now, since what is done cannot be undone, and the gift is under my roof, here let it stay. But I charge you on your love and obedience, never open the casket, for whatever it holds can do us no mischief while we keep it fast shut. And it is itself so royal, rich, and beautiful a thing that I have no heart to cast it away." Pandora was glad that she might keep the wondrous box, and every day she viewed it with delight as it shone like translucent gold in the sunlight. But after a while she wearied of that pleasure, and began to wonder more and more what might be hidden within it. Many a time, alone in her chamber, she sat gazing at the casket, until, longing to learn its secret, so nearly overcame her that she arose and went hastily forth, vowing to look on it no more. At last, in an accursed hour, she could resist her desire no longer. She laid her hand upon the lid, and raised it gently, very gently, half fearful of what she might see. Quick as thought, out flew a swarm of tiny winged sprites, soaring and drifting upwards like breeze-blown tufts of thistledown, and they vanished like a wreath of smoke through the open doorway. With a startled cry, Pandora closed the box. But, alas, too late. One glance had shown her it was empty, and she sat down and wept tears of disappointment. Now, had she known what she had done, she must have grieved 1,000 times more bitterly, for the sprites she had let loose were all the cares and woes and fell diseases that afflict mankind, and from that hour to this they fly abroad upon earth, pursuing hapless mortals from the cradle to the grave. Such was the dower that the first woman brought with her into the world. Prometheus found his wife weeping, and she told him what had befallen, and he forgave her and said, "Half the fault is mine, because I left the casket in your keeping. It seems that it is as much a woman's nature to be over-curious as it is mine to be wise too late. and he forbore to reproach her, although he now knew well enough by his power of afterthought what those sprites were. He asked Pandora if she was sure that they had all escaped, and she said yes. But by and by she thought she would look again, and when she opened the casket, she saw there was still one left, clinging beneath the gold rim that held up the lid, with its rainbow wings drooping as if broken. And something told Pandora that the name of it was Hope. End of Prometheus, the Firebringer. Read by Mark Harrington, Framingham, Massachusetts.